Chicago's 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, and Grant Park. My name is Rebecca Graff, and I'm an associate professor of anthropology at Lake Forest College and a historical archaeologist. For the SAA Public Day, I am taking you to a spot at the northern edge of Grant Park. It's the Art Institute, one of the premier museums in the world and one that was founded in 1879. Its present location has significance as a former site of not one, but two World's Fairs. But before looking at that 19th century history, I acknowledge that the land the Art Institute of Chicago is located on are the traditional unceded homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwa, Odawa, Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, and Fox, also call this area home. The region has long been a center for Indigenous people to gather, trade, and maintain kinship ties. Today, one of the largest urban American Indian communities in the United States resides in Chicago. This photograph was taken in front of the Art Institute as part of the performance art piece, Who's Lakefront. The red line represents the original shoreline of Lake Michigan, as the area to the east of it was made from fill, long after treaties with the Potawatomi ceded the land specifying that boundary. Beginning in 1914, the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians sued the city of Chicago and other landowners for possession of the Chicago lakefront. To learn more about that, check out Imprints, the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi Indians in the City of Chicago by John Lowe. The first modern World's Fair was the London Crystal Palace exhibition. 19th century World's Fairs as cultural forms emerged from the social currents of industrial capitalism, where a customer base of millions might be reached to consume the goods and ideas on display. The material results of this tradition of World's Fairs are what historian Thomas Sclareth characterizes as quintessential Victorian artifacts. They presented an encyclopedic display of raw materials, manufactured goods, new inventions, fine arts, entertainments, foods, native peoples, and ancient and modern architecture, all held in temporary cities designed to be demolished at each fair's end. Here's another famous fair with an element that even non-fair scholars may know. Gustav Eiffel's Iron Tower, soaring 1,000 feet above the city to become the symbol of both the Paris Exposition and eventually the city of Paris itself. This brings us to Chicago. Between May and October 1893, Jackson Park was the center of the world when approximately 12 to 16 million individual sightseers visited and revisited the area to experience the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. The White City, the main exhibition buildings of the fair, were designed in Beaux-Arts style by Daniel Burnham and his board of architects. The Midway Plaisance, a strip of land west of the main grounds, so called as it was located midway between Jackson and Washington Parks, housed commercial concessions as well as native villages, where American racialized ideologies were presented spatiotemporally, setting the terms for both the fair's vision of the present and the future by its portrayal of the so-called past. At a time when the total US population was approximately 63 million, over 27 million tickets were sold to the event. My archaeological and archival research focused on the 1893 Chicago Fair and its material record, linking it to larger social structures of late 19th century American modernity. But the Chicago Fair sites I excavated were in Jackson Park. So 20 years before that fair, on the current site of the Art Institute, was the 1873 Chicago Interstate Industrial Exposition. Held along Michigan Avenue from Monroe to Jackson Streets from September 25th to November 12, 1873, it was planned primarily as a venue for merchants and other business people to display their wares, generate income for Chicago's businesses, and foment the stagnant market, something especially critical after the devastating 1871 Chicago fire. The Interstate Exposition showcased exhibits of billiard tables, horseshoes, perfumes, artificial limbs, and more. Its 600,000 visitors had the opportunity to view the industrial goods for which the venture was named. It was meant to have a lasting impact on every echelon of society, and perhaps most importantly, it would elevate the working classes from the object lessons derived from looking at those industrial goods. The fair building was intentionally impermanent, though built on a grand scale. After the success of the Interstate Exposition, the temporary structure hosted 18 further expositions until 1892. When the building was torn down to make way for the Art Institute. This is why this guide to the 1893 fair shows an exposition building right where the Art Institute is, rather than with the rest of the 200 plus structures in Jackson Park. This brings us to the World's Congress Auxiliary. The World's Congress Auxiliary was authorized to the World's Columbian Exposition and US government. Its purpose was to procure the maturest thought of the world on all the great questions of the age in a form best adapted to universal publication. The structure was called the Permanent Memorial Art Palace, and it was in what was then Lake Park, now Grant Park. Unlike the fair in Jackson Park, there was no omission to World's Congress Auxiliary meetings, which ran concurrently with the exposition from May through October 1893. There were 20 departments listed here, from women's progress to agriculture, 210 committees, 1,245 sessions, 5,974 speakers, and an attendance of 750,000. All of this was designed as a counter to what they held to be the material, industrial, and mechanical triumphs of the fair in Jackson Park. The Congress planners considered this the intellectual and moral part of the fair. Famous speakers at the fair included Swami Vivekananda, who called for religious tolerance and introduced Hinduism to the US during the World's Parliament of Religions, Frederick Jackson Turner, who read his paper, The Significance of the Frontier in American History, at the American Historical Association meetings, where he presented that frontier thesis and announced that the frontier was closed, and Jane Addams, settlement activist and Nobel Peace Prize winner, who spoke at the World's Congress of Representative Women. That brings us to the Art Institute that you know today, which officially opened in that same space on December 8th, 1893. So thanks very much. Much of the work that I presented here is also in my book, Disposing of Modernity, with the University Press of Florida. Thanks very much.